In this video, we strive to remain spoiler-free, discussing only story and plot elements from the books relevant to what has occurred already on the show. When necessary, a spoiler warning with a countdown will be given.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to WoT the Adaptation. We're the YouTube show that reviews adaptations from one format to another format. This week, we continue on with The Expanse, the episode Here There Be Dragons. That's 211. But first, we have a guest. Jessi, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Tell everybody about yourself.
Yeah, so I do the YouTube channel Another Turning. It started as a podcast with my brother, and now I just talk about books. Right now, I'm in the middle of reading Malazan, so around the time this is uploaded, I should have uploaded my final video talking about the second book, Dead House Gates. That's what I'm doing right now, and a lot of fun. I talk about books. Yeah, I like it. It's
good to talk about. Rebecca, how have you been?
Been doing okay. Yeah.
You got anything going on at Reading the Pattern?
Actually have a video that I put out recently, which I have not put out any videos for Reading the Pattern in a while, but I did. I'd sort of been working for a while and like summing up, recapping all of the like season 2 news we've had for the Wheel of Time show. And like I did like a top 10 ranking, which I don't like ranking things, but I decided I would do it. And luckily we got the Jordan Con, news that like came out as I was like still editing the video. So I added all that in. And so it covers that and everything else we've learned about season 2 so far. So hopefully before we start getting more news, that's a good summary for everybody.
Definitely. So this is episode 211, Here There Be Dragons. I didn't by any chance write down who's director and writer. Sorry. It'll be on the screen.
Max isn't here. So.
Yes, I just realized Max isn't here. He's the one who does it. So I'll put it right there on the screen for everybody to see. And so, Rebecca, Jessi, what do you guys think of this episode?
So, yeah, go ahead, Jessi. What do you think?
Oh, okay. I thought it was interesting. One thing I'm really enjoying from the show as opposed to the book is getting the different perspectives. So I'm really enjoying seeing that. And I loved seeing Bobbie finally take some independence. That was such a good thing for me. So I really enjoyed this. I've been kind of iffy on the show so far, but this episode I really liked, which really reinvigorated me to keep watching the show.
It starts to get better.
Yeah.
A lot better.
How far into the show are you, Jessi?
I haven't watched past this episode because I didn't want to
So this is it. So I'll make sure I'm not
saying.
I mean, I know you've read further in the books, but
yeah.
But still, I'll obviously there are still some changes and certainly some things that happen in this episode that didn't happen in the books. So
right.
It's its own thing. I mean, it's funny because I hadn't been on our show here since episode 7, so then I haven't I'm rewatching the show. I've seen it all before, but I haven't caught up, so it was kind of okay, read the recaps on the wiki of all the episodes that I haven't watched, and then I did just rewatch this one. So yeah, I mean, I think rewatching it, I was just surprised there's more differences from the books than I realized the first time, because I sort of did my original read and watch where I started watching first.
Same here.
So I was ahead in the show compared to where I was in the books. So it's just a different experience doing it that way. So there's quite a lot of changes in this episode.
Yeah. With this series, for the longest time, I thought this was the most accurate to the book series that we've watched or show. In some ways, it is, but in some ways, it's quite not at all. But I mean,
I just think that goes to show, right, that even something that is fairly accurate and the writers of the books are involved in the show, they're they're the ones making a lot of these changes.
Right.
Sometimes. You still have to change a lot. So
yeah,
that's just the way it works.
Changes are one thing, and I'm not complaining, but a reversal doing the exact opposite of what the book, not just ignoring what the book did, but in times doing the exact opposite. And I couldn't think of any in this episode, but there've been some in recent episodes I've discussed. Go ahead.
I find them really curious because I've only read the first two books. I'm wondering how much of the stuff that feels like changes is stuff that we find out later in the books they're telling us earlier. And that's what it's kind of making me wonder. I don't know because I haven't read past this, but that's a lot of what I'm wondering when I see some of the changes is how much of this is stuff we just don't know yet. I don't know yet.
I feel for you there. I didn't read, I'd seen all the episodes all the way through all 6 seasons before I even picked up the first book. So I already had, everything was, I was skewed towards one story. And then all of a sudden I'm falling more and more in love with the books. And it took a couple books for that to happen, but I'm not going to say what might be found out later or not. I'm not going to ruin that for you. But but so I guess let's get into some of the changes more specifically, of all of the changes from the book to the episode. Let's talk about some we enjoyed and any that we didn't like. So I mean, I can get started, I guess. So like Jessi, you talked about getting like some different like perspectives in the show, which I agree, that's one of the, I think, strengths of a TV show that's harder to do in a book, is that you can do as many POVs as you want, right? You can just go check in on somebody else, and which that tends not to happen in the book, so that's a nice thing. And so one of the things they did in this episode to that end is give us some scenes of Alex on the Rossi, which, like in the book, Alex is always just like, he's off screen on the Rossi. We never we get some check in over the radio, but we never really see what he's doing. So I did like that. I felt like that was those were some kind of fun scenes in there to actually see what he's doing, kind of, because this is definitely in the books, but we don't really see it in the same way, that Alex has like a relationship with the Rossi, like as a character. Yes.
And so here we get to see that. So that was fun.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. That was one change that I loved. Any reason to see more Alex? I love Alex. One of my favorite characters on the show. My least favorite actor on the series, but my favorite character on the show, and one of my favorite characters in the books. Yeah. But there's a reason why I'm sitting here blocking him from his face, because I'm not promoting the actor whatsoever. But yeah, I really loved the Alex stuff. The changes, adding and having to do that gravity assist trajectory into Ganymede is just, I love saying that word, gravity assist trajectory into Ganymede. But yeah, I loved all that. There's nothing I could say I disliked when it comes to changes. Okay. Nothing in particular. So
interesting.
Jessi?
Yeah, I think I love that. I loved getting the trip to Venus being their ship.
Yeah.
Just because I think that's so much more exciting to get it that way than the way we got in the book, which is like we find out after the fact.
Yeah.
Bobbie's plot is what I'm finding. I both like the changes and dislike the changes. It's kind of sitting in that middle, because her relationship, not that that's the best word for it, with Martin is so interesting. And I don't love that he's so antagonistic towards her in this, whereas in the books he was very kind and gentle with her, because I think that, and then finding out what Mars was doing, gets rid of her internal conflict for me, or at least is going to make it, and maybe the show will play it off to do well, but to me, like, her whole conflict of, am I betraying Mars, feels less good to me when she has concrete reason to not trust Mars and to be working against Mars. On the other hand, though, she has so much more agency. She's choosing it rather than just kind of getting caught up in Avilasora in what she's doing. Like, I loved her choosing to fight back against Martins, and choosing to help the UN. I really like seeing that, which is a change, but I liked it for the most part, but I'm hesitant going forward with what her internal conflict's going to be.
You articulated it so well, because I feel 100% the same way about those changes. Like, there's that, conflict for me of, I get why they're making it's much more external, right? Like they're giving her a concrete external reason to make the decision that she made. Like, there's the drama of her like running to the UN side and being like, I'm, claiming like political asylum, like, that makes a lot of sense in a TV show, like, giving her this reason and this sort of more external dramatic reason to do it. But yeah, it does take somewhat away of that, interesting internal conflict she has of like, like, I'm sort of changing sides here. And like, yeah. But on the other hand, if someone did what Martin's did and revealed what he revealed, yeah, like, of course you're going to do it. So you're not going to look at her like as a traitor. But
the one thing I find weird about the whole thing with what they've done with Martin's, I have a hard time finding a reason why a Marine captain, which is the equivalent to a Navy lieutenant, who is a priest or chaplain / sociologist, would be part of the cabal that knows about Project Caliban.
Yeah.
That I find to be a bit of a stretch, especially since they should have just left it Thorson.
Yeah.
Thorson. That's his name.
Thorson.
They should have left it entirely Thorson, because Thorson was the one who was a bit more antagonistic.
Yeah.
Martin's was always only there to help her recover from her PTSD.
And
they should have. Yeah, but they had Peter Outerbridge.
Having Martin's as like an unknowing character, and that I feel works almost better. That he's working for the good of Mars and doesn't know what Mars is doing either. I think.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know the change, why they made that.
Yeah, I think you're right that if it was Thorson doing essentially what Martin's is doing here, you'd question that less, as
Yeah. And
but I mean, that's
sense.
the situation where and this happens often, I think, from the book to screen, that characters with the same name, if they're not a major character, they may essentially be just a different character, right? Like this Martins is not the Martins from the book. They're not at all the same. And you have to kind of just look at them as completely different. They have the same name and they're not the same person. They're not playing the same role in the story. And I think that happens a lot, unless you're talking about major characters.
He started out with the same role in the story.
Yeah.
It's just going in an entirely different direction.
It's kind of like when they end up sort of like, it's like conservation of characters, right? You don't want to have like, too many actors that you have to cast, too many different like names that people have to keep track of and everything. You end up using one person in multiple roles, and sometimes that works out really well. Sometimes, in this case, it might be a little confusing and a little bit too much consolidation.
I suspect that part of the reason why I guess I'll put it, kept Martins around instead of giving this to Thorson is because they cast Peter Outerbridge, who's a really well-established, really well-utilized character actor. He's he's in so many things.
Does a great job.
And he is a really good actor at what he's doing. I'll tell you this, though, he does seem pretty wimpy for a Marine, only being able to take 4 punches to the face before he gives in.
Hey,
Marines,
it's Bobbie Draper.
Marines get better training than that.
I'm going to just give that one to Bobbie. She
does probably have a really strong fist. I wouldn't want to take a punch from her.
No.
I would give in at 1 punch, but this guy is a Marine, Yeah. I don't know.
But no, I think you're right about the actor, because I think that's typically what it is, right? You have a good actor on your hands. Like, rather than that one actor having like one good episode, you can get like multiple good episodes from that actor if you kind of have them take over multiple things. And I think that happens a lot. And again, as long as we kind of just are like, okay, well, this Martins is a different one than the book, then okay, different role.
Very different.
Okay, so we covered Bobbie, we covered Alex. So another thing I wanted to say that this was, again, kind of adding in the perspectives that I liked quite a bit, was getting to see the little flashbacks with May and Dr. Strickland, because I think that really like added to the tension, like seeing that side of it. You're seeing it through May's eyes, and obviously she's like terrified and trying to like hold it together, and Strickland is horrible, like horrifying, evil, like, so like actually seeing that is, and then that whole thing is horrifying and effective.
The actor's so good in the role, though. The actor is so really good in that part.
Yeah, effective, really good in the terrible, terrible role. Yes.
The dramatic tension of that scene where they're identifying the plant, where she starts laughing and you can tell she's comfortable with him and he's going to do something horrible, is just so good, but so awful.
Yes. Yeah. No, there's lots of dramatic tension. So adding that in was really good. I like that a lot. What else? So, I mean, otherwise I feel like a lot of the Ganymede stuff is it's really just condensed down, right? A lot of stuff is just like, we're just doing this in a quicker fashion. Like we're taking out the, Wendell and the Pinkwater guys and stuff like that, like just certain like obstacles and steps along the way that they're facing are just out, and we're jumping much more quickly to like what is really happening there. Like that comes like understanding of like what they're doing there. We still don't fully understand it in this episode, but we have a much clearer picture of what's happening than we had at this point in the book. So they're just jumping quicker to like, okay, they're messing around with like hybrids, right? And we get that partially through Bobbie's story and partially through what we're seeing on Ganymede itself. And we're just kind of jumping right to it.
Yeah,
it took until I read the book before I really understood what was going on.
But at the same time, like at this point in the book, like it's more of a mystery. There's less information that we have at this point, I think.
I don't think I fully understand it, but you get enough in the show to know this is horrifying. They're experimenting with children and they're experimenting with the proto-molecule together. And that's enough to know it's awful. And we know there's something with super soldiers from Bobbie's point of view. So it's like you get enough information that you know it's awful and wrong.
Yes.
That's
I just remember being very confused the first couple seasons when proto-molecule was involved. Once proto-molecule wasn't directly involved in the story, I'm like, okay, all these episodes are making more sense to me. There's that first two seasons.
I don't know if I'd understand the threat of the proto-molecule as well if I hadn't read the books. Like, I don't know how well the show establishes what that is and what it's doing, but I do know now that they're getting more into the effect of it than the molecule itself. It's definitely more effective, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and part of that is, I think, that the people who are messing around with it and the people who have interacted with it at all at this point don't actually really know what its purpose is. And like they are trying to, it's like literally the complete like insanity and hubris of taking something that you don't know where it came from. You don't know what its intended purpose is. You don't know what it's capable of. You don't know anything about it other than, it can basically remake stuff, and then they're just like, okay, well, let's just like throw it at a bunch of stuff and see what happens. And like, let's try to turn it into a weapon. And I fully believe that people would do that, but it is wild. So,
hey, it killed somebody. We should make it a weapon. That's got to be exactly the reasoning. Oh, it killed someone. Let's make it a weapon.
So I wonder if, I don't think it's at all, this is not laid out, but how like we've seen previously that a lot of people who have been working on the proto-molecule have been altered so that they have like no real empathy, so that they're able to do these things. And then you have like some of the people that we see in this episode, like Strickland, and then basically there's him and there's like the woman who's like shot at, I don't even know if she has a name or whatever, but
credit in the closed captions she's listed as UMEA.
Okay, all right, well anyway, so I don't even remember if she was specifically a book character. I kind of think she isn't, but
sort of.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, there's a bunch.
There was a woman with Strickland when he picked up May.
Yeah. So, but I don't think she's named or anything.
No, she's never named.
But it could be her. Yeah, that might make sense. So, anyway, I mean, they both seem like they are sociopaths or whatever, but I'm not sure if they are altered or if that's just who they are.
I don't think she was. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so upset over the trigger happy fools or idiots or whatever she called them up in orbit, because the ships were shooting at each other all of a sudden. She sounded pretty unhappy about that. And
well, but I mean, she would be if they're messing with her experiment, right? I mean, like we've seen that, like with Cortazar and whatnot. So I think that it's possible, but I don't think it's definitive. The two of them could just be already, more of a
run-of-the-mill terrible people.
Yeah, just run-of-the-mill sociopaths. They're just born that way.
I think that's the case with Strickland.
Anyway,
maybe they're born with it. Maybe it's proto-molecule.
Exactly. That's the name of the episode, Glenn. Maybe they're born with it. Maybe it's proto-molecule.
All right.
Okay.
I'll think about it.
Think about it.
We gotta see. We'll see what happens while I'm editing. What I think about this episode.
Yeah.
That's usually when I come up with the episode title, so the video title, or start to think about it.
Yeah. I guess another change is like, so towards the end of the episode, like Naomi, at this point in the book, Naomi's not with them anyway. Like she's not part of that scene, but she decides she's going to stay. And it's interesting, Holden doesn't really argue. And then I guess the reason that I can see is that maybe he thinks she's actually safer because he's about to go hunt this proto-molecule hybrid, which is definitely not a safe thing to do. Although, what she's doing isn't safe either. It's just, I mean, I feel like Holden's big thing right now in the book and in the show is that like he's in like full on like proto-molecule PTSD. Like it's like his post Eros, like he's just like very triggered. Like the second anything proto-molecule is like in his vicinity, it's like he panics. So it was interesting to me that he like let go of her relatively easily, because you'd think his instinct would be to like, I'm panicking about the proto-molecule, like don't let anybody I care about like out of my sight. But if he thinks he's about to go do something very dangerous, which he is, maybe he thinks she's better off. So I don't know. I guess it might make sense, but that was just interesting because that's something added here that wasn't in the book.
I think that's similar or equivalent to, I mean, he starts to do more morally questionable things more and more often.
That's another big thing.
In the book, Naomi threatens to like leave him at that point, and then he kind of has this moment. And I think the implication from watching that scene play out is maybe a little bit of he feels she's holding him back. I don't know, that might just me be putting that in it, but he's like very gung-ho, I need to do this. And she, almost every step of the way, has said, stop, slow down. And I think maybe that's what's going on, is he still feels protective of her, which is why he tells Amos to stay.
Yeah.
But I think there's an element of maybe he feels like he'd be able to do what he needs to do if she's not there.
Yeah.
But that is definitely a little bit of me pushing what we actually.
I don't necessarily see like I don't see like resentment from him or anything, like or holding him back. I don't think it's like that, but there may be a little bit of like, okay, well, we're on different planes right now. Like we have sort of like different missions that we are like focused on. And I mean, he gives her that very warm kiss. And like, I think it's like meant to be like okay, like we each have our own things to do. Maybe like you got to go do this. I got to go do that, which fair. Yeah. They each have their own things. I didn't
mean from like a resentment standpoint, but he recognized they're on different paths. That's what it is.
Yeah. Which, and that makes sense.
I do have to wonder why he told Prax to stay. Just to keep Prax with Amos?
Well, again, the only thing I can think about that is if he's thinking, I'm about to go do something super dangerous. Prax is not a fighter, you know, like I think all of their instincts, and this is again more in the book than in the show, but a lot of their instincts are like, well, protect Prax because he's someone who needs to be protected. And you know, he doesn't know how to use a gun. He's not a fighter or a killer or anything like that. So I think it could be a little bit of that again, he's about to go do something dangerous and just not having it.
Don't know, because as far as I remember, he at this point when he tells Prax to stay with Amos and Naomi, they don't know that the proto-molecule monsters just outside. They know something did happen to that door, but they don't know about the monster.
They don't know it's literally right there. But I mean, I think he's got a pretty good idea.
But there was no sign of proto-molecule in this room. Yes, there was the boy with the proto-molecule on it, but I don't know that Holden saw him as going off to do anything dangerous per se until after Amos and Naomi left the room. Then Alex spots the monster out on the surface of Ganymede, and that's when Holden's like, "Oh, well, suit up. We're going on a hunt."
I don't necessarily agree, because I think Holden is putting two and two together with the various things that they've seen, and that a thing broke out of the airlock. Something broke out of the airlock, and he knows they've been messing around with proto-molecule. He knows they've been messing around with proto-molecule in children. He says specifically not too long before that he came here to destroy proto-molecule. That's why he's here. And I think he's putting two and two together and realizing they're experimenting on people with the proto-molecule. Something broke out of this airlock, and I'm going to go try and stop whatever is happening. So I think he knows he's about to go do something dangerous. I think he does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because before that moment, the reason Naomi chooses to stay, she like tells Holden, it's because if whatever broke out of here, that means the proto-molecule is beyond, like spreading beyond our control or something like that.
If it was here, it would be it could be 50 other places.
I think it's less it probably definitely partially that he wants to keep Prax out of danger, but I also think he doesn't entirely trust Prax. I mean, you have that scene not long before that where Prax fires a gun before he's ready and sets off a fire shot, you know?
Yeah,
so I think there's an element of this guy is a problem. He's not going to help. He's going to cause an issue kind of thing. So I think, he just kind of thinks Prax is not going to be at all helpful. And
I think keeping him in his room on the Rosti is a much safer place, because then letting him run free on Ganymede.
Yeah, I mean,
especially if he thinks the proto-molecule's on Ganymede. If he still thinks the proto-molecule's there, that's now 3 people that would have a chance of picking up the infection and come back to the ship. Whereas if he had kept Prax with him in the first place, it would have been 2 people chancing infection coming back to the ship.
Yeah. But I think Jessi's right.
Like I said, he could have put him in a room.
Prax is not like, he's focused on getting his daughter back, as he should be. But he's not thinking clearly. He's not like, a reliable, person at this point. So I think that's fair too. He probably doesn't see him as someone.
He's a little unstable.
Yeah.
Prax is definitely a little unstable.
He'd probably like to have Amos with him, thinking that Amos could help. But if it's between keeping Amos with himself or keeping Amos with Naomi, help Naomi. Because that's
the one who won't use a gun.
Right. Yeah.
I struggle with Naomi's character in this show so much. She, of all the main characters, feels so far removed from who she was in the book. Not that she was much of anything in the book, if I'm being honest. Like, she's just kind of there. But she is such a drastically different character from the show, and a season and a half in, and I still have not adjusted to this different version of Naomi. It's so hard for me.
Well,
there's all sorts of little things. She said, I wrote a note down because she says something to Prax. Prax is like talking about, talk to me when you've lost a kid or something. And she's like, I did, my baby boy. And I'm like, excuse me? What?
Yeah, so that's where I'm going to just zip it now, because there are things that you don't know about Naomi yet. So we'll just...
I figured. I figured. I assumed that wasn't a made-for-show thing. But yeah, so it just seems like she's such a different character. But I'm assuming it's pulling stuff from later. But it's just so hard for me to like watch and reconcile her. I also personally think she has absolutely no chemistry with Holden. I don't know if that's like the actors or the writing or what. I just don't think they have any chemistry. So every time they're together, I'm like, I just want this done. So I'm struggling with Naomi. I gotta be honest.
I mean, I think it's tough because I mean, already at this point in the books, like there's a lot more written in the books that like explains their relationship development. Like there's many more like layers and stages to it, even at this point, that was written that's not really in the show. Like the way they got together was completely different. I mean, on the one hand, I like that we get more of Naomi at this point in the show because there are layers to her, which we just don't get because we don't get her POV at this point in the books. And so I like that there's more to her. And so that's a good thing, but I will agree that the amount of development that has gone into that relationship thus far is a lot less. So it's just a little harder to understand.
It's definitely something I'm struggling with probably the most in the show. Is just Naomi's character being so different, but also that relationship is just doesn't work for me. I think she made more sense with Amos, but that's me.
Oh, well, I don't know.
That would
Amos
be weird.
It would be weird, but I kind of like it. But anyway.
Okay, well, now since we're talking about, alternates, I'll just go ahead and say that in this season of the show, I kind of wanted Amos and Prax to get together, which I made up entirely. It's not there at all. I just made it up.
I can see that too,
But no, it's just because honestly, I think they have somewhat of a friendship, and I mean, there's more of the season, but like you can see a tiny bit in this episode, right, where like Prax is saying to Amos, like, I need a gun, give me a gun, like, and like it's not a smart idea to give Prax a gun, like it's not a good idea. But Amos does it because he sees what Prax is going through. And then like right before it's something towards the end of the episode where Prax is like thanking Amos, specifically. And so there's a connection that they kind of form. And the season isn't over yet, so there's more to come. But I think there's a connection between them, and it's friendship. I made up the whole.
I just love Amos. I just love him. I think
I do fantastic. Like him.
He's so he needs help. I love him though.
Yeah.
I love him so much, and I do. I think he has such good interactions with literally all of the characters. I like his little banter with Alex. I love the way he interacts with Naomi. I like him. He's probably my favorite character in the show.
Yeah, he's great. I love Amos. Yeah, he's the best.
Max's favorite character is definite.
Yeah, he's a big time Amos fan. Yeah.
Right, I like Amos.
From a changes standpoint that we wanted to touch on? I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, So then let's talk about the episode from like just a production standpoint. Basically, what was the production quality of the episode like for you? How well did they adapt? The way things are described in the books.
Jessi?
I mean, I'm not a super visual reader when I read. I mean, for the most part, the props, they look like, spacesuits and space guns and whatever. So it works for me. The one thing that stood out, though, was May's backpack. That scene where it cuts to it and got that weird 3D effect. I just don't get it. I'm like, why?
That was a bit weird.
But other than that, I really love the backpack because it's this bright thing in this dim, dreary world, and it's so good. But that one moment where they're like, let's add an effect because it's sci-fi.
I could have sworn it was described. I could have sworn it was described as a hologram in the book.
Maybe.
I don't remember it being described at all, but it might have been.
It might have been. I just thought
maybe it was a
weird
sticker he saw somewhere from Miska and Marisko that had 3D, because there was 3D hologram stickers in the series. I remember that. So in the book,
I mean, I think that was funny, like, and probably completely unnecessary to add in that little effect, but you know, it's fine. But I agree about the.
I'd have a backpack like that.
As a good visual.
If I could have a backpack with a hologram on the back, I'd do it.
I mean, it's
maybe not that particular backpack.
It's 100% something a 7-8-year-old girl would absolutely adore. I mean, I remember like when I was a kid and the things that like you could shift them and this picture would change, you know, like those were all the craze. So and now with the sequins, like I absolutely could see like a 6-7-year-old girl loving a backpack that has like this image hologram out. But it's just the effect, I think, was goofy in the show. But other than that, I loved the backpack because I liked this bright pink, colorful backpack in this dark, dreary, black, gray sci-fi scape. Yeah.
I mean, I think in general for me, I don't have any real complaints. I definitely see the silliness of that one shot, but I don't really have any big complaints. I think a lot of times when things don't stand out, it's good, right? You know, like nothing is drawing attention to itself as being like, well, that didn't look right or whatever. And so I think that that's generally a good thing. One funny thing that I'm sure this has been in there before and I just never paid attention to it, but like kind of struck me as, oh, that's a nice detail, I think, is that on the Roci, the light change, like from when there was like an alarm to no alarm, the no alarm is red. And that's not typical for like, you know, sci-fi color coding, right? Think about like, you know, red alert on Star Trek or whatever. But it's Martian ship. So red being a Martian color, I was like, oh, that never stood out to me before. But I think
I'm pretty sure the real reason why they have red for the non-emergency is because red light is less impactful on your ability to see. It's lower energy, so when lights are out, you're able to see better if you've been using red than any other color in the spectrum.
It's probably smarter.
I know on U.S. Navy ships they use red in a lot of areas. And when I was at Navy Basic, at night our barracks was it was red lights. It was not dark. We didn't sleep in the dark. We slept under red because you could still walk around, not have your night vision impacted by the red light. So,
no, that's smart. And the other reason I think in this show is that blue is a danger color in this show because it's protomolecule. And so, you know, sort of opposite there. So they do nice things with that in the show with, I think, color coding basically in their own way. So that I noticed when and I'm sure that's been in there before, but I just didn't pay attention to it.
Jesse's point about the backpack breaking up the monotony of all that blue and gray and black. I'm telling you, scrubbing through the episode, looking for shots to use that are not super heavily colored in one direction, where I would have to undo the color shift, like it being super red or being super blue, is not an easy thing to do. Because I need a fair number of stills from each episode when I'm editing. And sometimes finding a good still shot that's well lit and good color is really hard. And I've had to have some washed out areas in some of the still shots that I've used because I brightened up everything just enough that the face could be seen. And that was the best shot I could find. So, I'm annoyed with the color palette in this show at times.
Unless you're on Earth and then everything is so brightly lit, which is, I think, a great visual indicator. I think that's, I mean, it's not this episode, but that scene where, like, anytime Bobbie walks outside, just the overwhelming brightness or the windows, you know, I think is a really cool effect. That difference versus when you're on a spaceship or, you know, the darker tones. I think it's a really, really clever device. I agree. Okay. Anything else we wanted to mention on either production
quality or dialogue.
I wanted to say, when it comes to the CGI, the VFX, the flight Alex takes down to Ganymede as he's doing the whole thing, all the exterior shots as we're seeing outside just looked amazingly beautiful. Not realistic, but amazingly beautiful nonetheless. You know, this is science fiction, so I'm forgiving about the inaccuracies of how realistic that would be. But yeah, that was just gorgeous to watch. You know, there was one nice VFX shot that looked really bad, and it was the incinerator.
Oh yeah, that did look a little weird,
especially since it disintegrates the entire thing. It just like superheats everything up, and it just all goes poof.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with something like that, and I did notice that too. I forgot about it. Is like, you're basically saying, okay, well, here's technology that we don't have, right? Something that could like incinerate that quickly, that completely. We don't have that technology. And I think that's a little bit of the problem with it. Not so much that like the VFX itself looks so horrible, but just that our brains looking at that go, that doesn't look right, because we don't have anything that can do that. And like, okay, we know it's science fiction and we can accept lots of weird tech in science fiction. But I think it's just our brains going, that doesn't look right, you know, because we kind of know that it doesn't work that way.
Protomolecule, sure, no problem. I can believe in that.
But
the incinerator on Ganymede? No, not working for me. Okay. I know it's fickle. Yeah.
Any comments that we want to make on the dialogue? You know, any in terms of maybe how was it, any adapted lines from the books or anything else?
There wasn't anything adapted, but there was just one short little bit that I get a kick out of every time I watch that scene, and it's when they first hear the noise on the other side of that door. And they're all gunning up and everything. And Holden says, just wait here. And Amber's like, no chance. Amos says, hell no. And Prax says, no fucking way. And I just get a kick out of that. And especially since the F-bomb came from Prax instead of Amos or Naomi. I'm just like, and it was just this, you know, no chance to hell no to no effing way. Blanking the word escalation. Escalation of the swearing, you know, and it ends with Prax. I'm just like, that. I got a kick out of that.
For me, there really wasn't much that stood out. So I think similar to the other production elements, if it doesn't stand out, it's probably not that bad, except for the one scene between Martins and Bobbie, when Martins is like ranting at Bobbie about like back in my day. That was the one that I was like, this is a little heavy-handed on when I was in the Martian, you know, yada yada. You kids these, I mean, not that he says it that way, but that's what it feels like. And I was like, yeah, that was a little heavy-handed. But other than that, like nothing stood out. So
yeah, I mean, I thought that too, but then I was like, well, you know, in some ways, I can kind of appreciate the idea that, like, you know, old, like middle-aged older people are always saying that, like at any generation, like apparently, you know, like that just never changes. So I guess that's
back in my day.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever.
You know,
I probably
the problem with your generation.
I teach middle schoolers, and I've found myself saying it. So.
I mean, it just happens. So it's a universal human.
They're fine.
Okay.
Middle
all right.
schoolers.
So then,
my mom used to be secretary at middle school, so I heard a lot of stories.
I love them. They're great.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about our, like, you know, favorite scenes or standout scenes of the episode.
Bobbie punching Martins in the face. It was so good. So good.
Yes. I understand that. Yes, I can agree with that. That is a fun scene.
Yeah, I think that, and like kind of continuing into like her like running and like claiming political asylum. I think that shot, like that little bit of the episode, that definitely was something I remembered, and I was like waiting for that to come. Like as I'm rewatching, I'm like, yes, Bobbie running and like, you know, claiming asylum. Like I was waiting for that.
My most remembered scene goes back to remembering it from the first time I watched season 2 when it was first airing, was when after Amos throws the grenade back through the door and you're just hearing everything happening over in there. You know, you hear the grenade go off. You hear, well, you hear people freaking out that he's throwing the grenade back in. And then there's the scream, the boom, and then they're all screaming because they're injured. And then you hear the glass shatter, and then you hear roaring, and then even more screaming and guns shooting. And then, you know, you can hear the bang, bang, and then air's like, you hear the whole thing. And if you already know what's going on, like from reading the book and you're listening to it, you can tell what each little step you're hearing is. And it's just like, yep, that, you know, I remembered that stuck in my head. One of the many episodes,
you're saying is
scenes.
We should have called out the sound production design and getting like, that was well done. Yeah.
Some sound production did a really good job with that. My most enjoyed though is definitely Alex and the Rossi plotting the gravity assist trajectory. The whole conversation leading up to it being, you know, as time to slingshot, you know, that whole sequence with Alex, I just loved that. But, you know, I'm partial to Alex, so I'm going to love that scene. There is one scene in the episode I hate, and every time I watch it, I skip it after like the third or fourth time. And that's Dr. Strickland talking about the chrysalis with May, telling May about the chrysalis. I just did, you know, him talking about splitting the chrysalis. No, I don't want to hear about that. I got tired of hearing about that.
He makes your skin crawl, but in some ways, like that is memorable. And I was going to just add in that for me, I think a lot of what's memorable in this episode is everything to do with May. Like basically every time like May is on screen, because again, the dread, the horror of like, you know, where is she now? Like what's happening to her, and like what she's seeing and how horrible Strickland is. That stands out a lot to me in this episode. So.
He is just the worst.
He's the worst.
Well, maybe not the worst on this show, but the worst in this episode.
I mean, he's up there among the worst in this show, you know, I mean, so far.
Yeah. I just accidentally saw the face of the worst because I'm trying to find the name of the actor who plays Strickland. But
he doesn't quite beat out Dresden for me, I don't think.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to beat Dresden.
Dresden's pretty bad.
Dresden's pretty bad.
I'm not going to be able to find the actor's name. I want to say Abern. Something.
So I actually, that chrysalis scene, as gross as it is, as you're repeating it, it's such a good foreshadowing, I think. So it's definitely a good scene that's setting things up really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does make my skin crawl. And I think if I had to watch it again, I would struggle. Like, because I watched it twice to get ready for this, and I think I would struggle to watch it again.
Yeah.
Did you notice when he grabbed that leaf off the plant? I didn't notice that the first two times I watched it.
I noticed
I didn't know why, but I
grab it. But yeah, I didn't realize that it was because there was a chrysalis on there, but I noticed him grab the leaf, and it's a weird thing. Like, why are you grabbing that leaf, dude? You know,
I had assumed it was going to be like, and I don't know why that would be sitting around as a decorative plant, but I assumed it was going to be something that he was going to somehow give to May to knock her out. And I don't know why I thought that, because why would that be lying around? But I was like, there's got to be a reason he grabbed that. It's probably something like this. But yeah, then it being a chrysalis thing, which also feels weird. Like, it feels like Ganymede probably shouldn't have like butterflies and caterpillars just free flying around, but maybe they do.
Well, I just listened to it in the book when I was listening to bits of the book again earlier. They actually had a containment problem or a containment experiment that failed and they had moths or butterflies. No, it was butterflies had gotten out into Ganymede.
Okay.
So it did happen at least once, you know, which makes me think, was he like, environmental control, taking that leaf off to keep one less, pest, potential pest from spreading. And then I remembered, no, because he knows just what's about to happen here. Yeah. He knows there's not going to be a Ganymede left to be worth talking about. So
you were thinking of Prax, because there's like early scenes of Prax in the books where he's like still thinking like, oh, things need to be fixed, and before he realizes how screwed they are.
That was like last episode, which I loved that. I'm not what we're talking about, but I loved that scene with him in the wall of the plants. And anyway,
I enjoyed it too. That was one of my scenes that I liked.
Okay.
Those are the three scenes I wanted to mention.
Okay. Yeah.
Either of you?
No, I think that was it. So we can talk about our actors, our castings in this episode that stood out.
I've got three, so I'll let you go first.
Well, no, actually, I'm gonna defer because I'm not sure what I want to say in this episode, and partially because like there are actors that I might want, because I haven't been on in a few episodes, so there's actors I might want to mention, not necessarily because of this episode, but just in general. So I don't know, Jessi, do you want to start?
Jessi, did you have?
I mean, this isn't something I have strong feelings about. We've talked a lot about some of the great actors. Like I said, I think Strickland's doing a fantastic job. He's really crushing it. I think for a child actor, the girl doing May is doing a really good job. I mean, it's a child. She's doing a decent job. And honestly, I could not memorize the names of those plants, so good for her. The one that bugs me, and it's been bugging me, and she's doing a good job acting. So I don't want to disparage the acting she's doing, but the actress for Bobbie is just so tiny. And I pictured Bobbie in my mind as just this huge monolith of a woman. And so to see this like relatively small woman walk up and be Bobbie is a little rough for me, but she's doing a great job with it. So it's just the physicality of it. But then watching her beat up Martins, I was like, you know what, it's fine. So
Frankie Adams.
That small? Like,
she's 5'11".
Okay.
She's 5'11".
She is bigger than I thought she was. I just think maybe, I don't know if she's around people that are bigger than her, or something about that is not translating in my brain to.
Well,
kind of
she's supposed to be 6'7".
Yeah, she's supposed to be huge, and
she's 2 meters tall.
From what I remember, and I think this was from the podcast that Ty Frank does with Wes Chatham, and they were talking about casting Bobbie, and it was hard because there was like no one that matched Bobbie's description, and they had to like really go out of their way to even find Frankie Adams, who plays the role. And I think in a lot of ways she fits beautifully, and I think she does a great job. Yeah, she's not 6.5 feet tall, but when you describe someone like that, I mean, good luck finding them in reality. So
my issue,
not dissimilar to the Wheel of Time. We're going to make Moraine super teeny tiny, and you're never going to find somebody that fits that. So I think it's the same thing. It's just one of those things where for some reason it is a hang up for me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, because it's such a small thing, but for some reason it's such a hang up. And I think I want to see her doing more of those physical things so that I can that can overwrite that. But she does a fantastic job. Like, I don't want to like disparage her acting at all, because she does amazing with the role. Right. It's just for some reason when I look at her, I don't see Bobbie.
I think letting her be like physically intimidating, physically dominating in scenes helps a lot. When she's in the soldier role and she has to, when she's like, okay, I'm not looking at you, I'm staying 100% in my like expected, demeanor. I'm tightly controlled. You don't necessarily get that Bobbie vibe, because I think it's when she can be physically intimidating or physically dominating that you get more of that. So
she was Bobbie for me before Bobbie was Bobbie, because I saw the show first. So I didn't have 6'7" Roberta Draper in my head. I had Frankie Adams in my head. And even after I finished the show and started reading the books, And as I got further and further into the books, all the way through to the end, she's Bobbie. She's my headcanon for Bobbie. I just picture her, like 10% bigger.
Yeah, I think sometimes
just that much bigger.
This show does that. And I have a similar thing with Naomi in the books, because Naomi in the books has like long hair. Yeah. And like she's always like hiding behind it, like hiding behind her like long hair in her face. And I every time I read something like that, I'm like, because like no, like she has Dominique's hair. Like I just can't get over that when I'm like reading about Naomi's hair in the book. So I don't know.
The one complaint I have about Frankie Adams' Bobbie is she's too young. I think she's a gunnery sergeant. I know in U.S. history, the youngest gunnery sergeant the United States Marine Corps has had is 27, maybe 28, but I think it was 27. She's 23 when she started this part, which is the opposite. Usually actors are older than the character they're supposed to be playing. In this case, it feels like she's younger than the character she's supposed to be playing. So, but I'm
going to say it's okay because Bobbie Draper is better than anybody else. So it's fine if she's younger than anybody else. It's okay.
She's well, she's my number 3. Terry Chen as Prax is my number 1.
Yeah.
I know the show has her as our 0th position as Shohreh Aghdashloo in the top spot, but I'm putting her as number 2 this week, and then Frankie Adams is number 3 for me on Best Actors. But Terry Chen is just too good as Prax.
That's what I was going to say, because like he was the one that I wanted to call out in this episode, but I was like, well, I mean, it's not necessarily specifically this episode, although he's good in this episode, but it's just because in general, I love him. And I haven't gotten to talk about him yet. So that's it.
Yeah, I think he really embodies that like desperation really well. The like panic and desperation so well.
Yeah. And they've toned down the panic a lot. But
now
it's a little colder. It's determined. Desperation.
Right.
See, my experience with Terry Chen started with this sci-fi show called Continuum, where he's basically like a super spy type agent, like a super agent, and anything but Prax. I mean, this guy would probably whoop Amos's ass. Okay, the character he played on Continuum would whoop Amos's ass. So
that's hard to do. Hard to find a character.
We've got him playing
Amos's
now ass. We've got him playing this character, which is like as far away as you can get.
He's a botanist.
Yes. A botanist who, practically cries at the drop of a hat with good reason, but he's still he's in the book, he's crying more often than he's not crying, it seems like.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Granted, he has very good reason to be doing so, but still. But yeah. Anything else on Terry Chen that you wanted to bring up, Becca?
No, he's just great. I just love him. That's all. I haven't actually seen him. I don't think I've seen him in anything else. But no, I just read with him.
Most recent thing I've seen him in, he was just in The Last of Us.
Oh, okay.
One episode. Played an army guy, military guy. But yeah, Shohreh Aghdashloo as Chrisjen Avasarala, as always, is just, I mean,
of course.
Yeah.
She's just too good for this show.
She's never not excellent. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I need more of her interacting with her family. Those are my favorite Chrisjen moments.
Those are nice. Yeah. And that's something that sometimes I would say we don't get as much of that in the show as we got in the books. So yeah, but no, I do like that. I love her relationship with Arjun, and
so good.
Yeah, so good.
Are you reading or listening to these? Just curious.
I was listening to them, audio.
Okay. Jefferson Mays. I love his Avasarala. I love his Avasarala.
He does.
It's just funny that white dude does Avasarala just as good as Shohreh does. But
he does do a good job. No, it's because it's true. He's got to be like this, like totally like tough little old
grandmother.
I guess she's Indian in the book. I don't know if she's
Indian.
Anyway, but
yeah, she was Indian.
Yeah. All right. So I think it's time to talk about themes, right? I didn't miss anything, did I?
Themes, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I know Glenn likes to go last. And I definitely, I feel like I'm like playing catch up because I don't have fully formed thoughts on themes in this episode. But
you're usually
Jessi,
the one with
if you
all of
want
them.
to jump in, you can.
I didn't really take too many notes on this personally. I mean, the clear themes here are like striving for peace, but at what cost? I think kind of comes up a lot, which I think is also there in the books. I gotta be honest though, these are both the show and the books aren't the kind of thing that I'm reading deeply for themes and stuff like that. It's definitely something I'm just having fun. And I think they both deliver that, but I think that that's the one that just stands out, that is the cost of war and then what we have to do to make peace. And I think, I mean, you have, that wasn't as heavy this episode, but you have, Chrisjen trying so hard to fight for peace. And you have, not necessarily, I guess peace maybe isn't the right word, but even like Holden's whole thing is to fight the proto-molecule to keep people safe. So I guess safety and security would be more accurate. And even like Mars trying to buy the proto-molecule is doing it for the security of Mars. Everything going on with the OPA is for the security of the belt. So I think that's the big theme, is striving for security, safety, and the cost you're willing to pay in order to achieve that, which I think the show does really well, keeping that theme going across all of the plot points, which I think is also happening in the books, but because we get fewer perspectives, it's harder to make that theme feel as all-encompassing as it is in the show. The show is just very clearly across the board, this is what we're looking at.
Sometimes,
yeah. I mean, I think for me, probably the thing that I would agree with that, and I think that that is pretty strong at this point in the story. And I think in the book, especially, it's centered around Holden, but you can expand it, beyond him as well, which is like, okay, you're fighting against what is arguably evil, right? Like, I think it's a pretty arguably evil thing to take a technology from aliens that is, that kills people and use it to experiment on children. Like, that is evil, if anything is. And so you're fighting against that. And so then the question is like, okay, well, are you justified in doing anything to stop that, to fight against that? And Holden, I think, is struggling with like, okay, well, what is this doing to me as a person? Am I no longer myself? Am I making choices that go against like my principles, like who I am, in order to fight against it? And so I think that's then, becomes a question and a theme. And you could, look at like, for Prax, I think it seems simpler, right? Because like, okay, well, someone took his daughter, right? Like and I think it's very easy for us to sympathize with that and go like, okay, yeah, I get that. Like, he's a parent who is trying to save his innocent child. We understand him almost doing anything. But then there's still the question of like, is there a line you shouldn't cross? Like, so I think you could expand it to a lot of the characters, but I think those two have that more strongly focused on that.
I'm going to dovetail off you talking about Prax and lost his daughter to point out the fears of inherent in being a parent. We had Prax having his daughter taken, and also Naomi talking about her son taken. So we've got two parents both going through their child being stolen. We've got a little bit of that in this segment of the book. Well, this approximate segment of the book with Ava Serralo thinking about the fact that her son would have been at this bar where she sees Bobbie. Her son would have been here if things had worked out different. And, because in the book, he dies I don't even remember. I think he died in a skiing accident in the book.
Yeah.
On the show, he was in the Marines and got killed by belters.
Yeah.
But, you know, yeah, it's only on the two characters, but, you know, still, I thought that stood out. The big one for me, though, was trust, and its opposite, distrust. May has this trust in Dr. Strickland because she's grown up knowing him for her whole life. Bobbie formerly had trust in the MCRN command, and now it's a very, very strong distrust in MCRN command.
It's like loss of trust, betrayal of trust is what it really comes down to in both of those cases.
Yeah. But then there's Praxis trust in Holden, Naomi, and Amos. He didn't know them before he approached them, or before in the show before they practically kidnapped him. They started to kidnap him. Well, that's what it sure seemed like. Yeah. You know, when they just grabbed him and drag him off. You know, it's like, what's going on? It's like, you stay out of this. You know, some guy who was trying to stop him was like, it's like, so for the way that relationship started on the show, he's showing an awful lot of trust in the three of them.
I think a little more in Amos which is interesting, like I said. But yes, I mean, I think, he is coming too. Yeah. Then
there's Alex's trust in the Rocinante's computer to plot that trajectory. You know, and look, Alex just trusts the computer, the Rossi, the ship herself, just way
they
too
have
much.
A relationship. Okay.
You do. You know, and people wonder where the robots are on this show. The Rossi's one of those robots. There are robots all over the place in the books and on the show. All those little drones you see flying around, those are freaking robots, you know? I remember recently seeing somebody saying that there's no robots in the Expanse, and I'm like, are you watching the same show, reading the same book?
There's just there's no droids. That's all. Like, you know, like Star Wars droids or like, and you know, whatever.
Hey, careful. I can mute you.
I wouldn't say anything bad about it.
I'm just picking on droids. And then Avasarala trusting Kotiar, but not trusting Jules Pierre Mao. And then Kotiar's distrust of Jules Pierre Mao, Jules Pierre Mao. I've been corrected on how that's pronounced.
Yeah, I do want to call him Jules too. Yeah, I tend to do that.
Yeah, I forget. I've only recently learned it's Jewel, and I keep forgetting it's Jewel. But yeah, those are the 2, 3. I mean, trust and distrust, if you want to count them separate or together. Those are the themes that stuck out to me watching this episode. I'm still not used to watching for themes or reading for themes. Until this show, it was never anything that I did. And now I'm doing it like twice a week, it seems like. But it's only every third week with the other channel, so it's not too bad. It just we're recording tomorrow, and I've got to edit overnight, so this is going to be a fun night. It's going to be fun tomorrow.
Okay, good luck.
But hey, at least I was putting out an episode this week. I wasn't sure if I would be, or if it was going to be just a 2-person. I'd much rather have 3 people on a panel. Conversation goes easier for something like this with 3 of us than 2. Although Jim and I did manage to put out an hour-long video when the 2 of us did it. Jim from Fantasy for the Ages. Yeah, they're a great channel. I love that channel. I've been watching a lot of their stuff lately. And not just because Jim's been on 3 times now, I think. 2 or 3 times. And he's got another appearance later this season. Any other things anybody wanted to bring up about this episode or this section of the book?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I'm just starting to remember, because it's been so long since I read the book. There's things coming back to me now that's about to happen. And now I'm like incredibly nervous for the show.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Things get.
I know the feeling.
Specifically with Pax's plotline, there's a certain thing that I just remembered happened while we were talking, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, so. Yeah. There's some intent
about the baby's mama.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had totally had forgotten about that until Max mentioned it a couple weeks ago. So
no, I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah, no, that was pretty horrible. Poor Prax.
Yeah.
So awful.
And that's one thing that doesn't get put on the show, if I remember correctly, is that particular.
Yeah, it might not. I don't remember for sure actually either, because I haven't rewatched the rest of the season, so I don't remember for sure.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Or not, but
I know with like book one events, the whole propaganda type stuff wasn't as big of a plot point as it was in the book, so I could see the stuff with the wife or the ex-wife not happening.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just
focused on that.
I mean, if you think about it, it's like Prax didn't even, like, in the book, Prax is like at the beginning of the book and all the way through, and like in the season, because of the way they structured the season, he didn't come in until like several episodes in.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like his story is condensed and changed a bit.
Yeah, because I don't think we see him in book 3, and I don't think we see him in season 3.
Aww.
I don't think. I'm trying to remember what season 3 is. Oh, I remember what season 3 is. Never mind.
Well, then zip it, because
yeah, I'm not going to say
stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely that's one thing about this series, is that, I mean, there are definitely characters who like recur and repeat or whatever, but I feel like a lot of times, like with a new book, there's like new characters. You're like, oh, okay, I haven't seen this person
and
before.
I do know we see Prax again. We do see Prax again after season 2 ends. So I know that much. I'm just not going to say when and where.
Okay.
So,
which season or which book.
Okay.
Yeah, it took me a second to remember what season 3 was, and then I remembered what book 3's title is. I'm like, oh yeah, that tells me right there exactly what's storyline. I'm not giving anything away.
No, but you just,
I'm just saying I remembered
around it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna wrap it up before Glenn just tells us the very end of the series. It's like right on the tip of his tongue. He's just trying to say it, so we're just gonna wrap it up.
All right, so I think we're all wrapped for the night.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Jessi, for coming on. I had a great time chatting with you.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, definitely. Hope to have you back again. Rebecca, thank you for coming on tonight, filling in. It was a little last minute, but thank you for saving the channel, the episode for tonight. So thank you for saving my butt.
Okay, well, I'm glad I could, and I'm glad I got to chat with you, Jessi, because it's always fun to just have someone new to chat with too. So that was awesome.
She's gotten tired of me and Max. It's just too much of me and Max the last year and a half. It's been that long.
Yeah.
Wow, I know. We're coming up on 2 years in just a couple months here. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please come back next week as we talk about episode 212. Don't ask me the episode title. It'll be right here. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to be awesome.